Hello everyone, and welcome to the VISTA Sponsor Orientation. We're excited to have you with us today in looking at this first glimpse of the information and resources that are needed to carry out your new role as VISTA Project Director. We're very excited to be with you today, as I mentioned, and today you will hear from two CNCF staff members throughout the presentation. My name is Eric Powell, and I'm an AmeriCorps VISTA training specialist at the Corporation for National and Community Service here in Washington, D.C. And I also very proudly served as an AmeriCorps VISTA member in 2006 to 2007 and an AmeriCorps VISTA leader in 2008 and 2009 with Campus Compact, and I'm grateful that my experience has brought me now to work for CNCF.
Hi everyone, I'm Jillian Winters and I'm a State Program Officer with the Office of Field Liaison at the Corporation for National and Community Service. I'm located in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I work with AmeriCorps VISTA projects and Senior Corps projects across the state of Louisiana. I also served 2 terms as an AmeriCorps VISTA, and just like Eric, I'm very excited that I was able to translate my service into a career. So throughout our presentation, we may be joined by a few other CNCF staff members assisting us with the chat panel and working together to provide you essential information and answer your questions.
So now that you know a little bit of information about us, let's briefly learn about who's with us today. This also might make you help connections with people geographically near you or who are working at similar organizations, especially because we hear frequently that supervisors and sponsors want to connect with each other. So please take a moment to answer these 3 quick questions in the chat panel. What is the name of your organization? Where are you located? And, just for fun, what is your favorite summertime activity? As you type, we'll answer the questions as well. You already know that Jillian and I both work for CNCF, and you know where we're located. I'll add that my favorite summertime activity really depends on the day, but sometimes it's just going outside and catching the beautiful sun at sunset. Jillian, what about you?
Oh, this is a hard one. Louisiana is so hot in the summer, but it is also a beautiful time, and I'm so thankful that I'm from the Midwest, so here in Louisiana we have much closer access to the beach, so anytime I can go swimming or go to the beach is always my favorite summertime activity.
You're making me want to go to the beach right now, but this webinar is a little bit more important, so I'll stay here at least until 4:30. But I see Megan from Mission St. Louis loves to travel. Kristen is also from Missouri and loves being on the water. A lot of people love being on the water. Cambridge, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania. We have people on this webinar, looks like from all over the country, which is great. And again, most people enjoy over the summer either being outdoors, doing a fun activity like swimming, getting sun, visiting the beach. So this is great. Wonderful to see that. And thank you for that short activity. You can still keep them coming in the chat and get to connect with each other as well. I'm now going to turn it over to Jillian for a few more introductory comments.
All right, thanks, Eric. So while this information is most relevant for VISTA project directors, we've designed a session so that everyone involved in the management and oversight of VISTA project will gain valuable knowledge from reviewing this content. We recommend that VISTA project directors, project and site supervisors, and authorized representatives all review this content so your organization will be well prepared to manage a VISTA project. In our development, we are assuming that you are relatively new or maybe even brand new to VISTA. In developing today's presentation, we also assumed that our participants have looked at a number of materials ahead of time. This includes VISTA 101 and 201, and these materials are stored on the VISTA campus. So not to put anyone on the spot, but to get a quick idea, please type yes, no, or in progress if you have started or where you're at with your VISTA 101 and 201.
Looking at the responses so far, it looks like a pretty good mix. What do you see, Jillian?
Yeah, I'm seeing a pretty good mix, definitely.
And we know that some of you may not have been familiar with the VISTA 101 and 201 or may not have seen it on the the sponsor orientation page of the VISTA campus. So just keep in mind that if you have not yet completed them, we do think that it is in your best interest to complete them, especially because of the important material and foundational elements that it gives you. And trying to complete them as soon as possible would be great, especially so it'll best situate you for success as a VISTA sponsor. So let's take a look at today's agenda for the orientation and the information that we're going to cover. This session today will focus on key pieces that will give you the initial information that you need to ensure your success as a VISTA project. Because, of course, we all want success. It's a great thing. So today, we're going to cover where to start. We'll look at resources and people that can help you get your bearings in the world of AmeriCorps. Under the big picture, we'll take a look at an overview of CNCS, including the structure of national service, CNCS programs, our chain of communication, and the core principles of VISTA. Core responsibilities will focus on your responsibilities relating to VISTA member support and project management, as well as important governing documents showing what you need to do for our work together. Keys to success, pretty obvious. We'll provide tips, training, tools, and resources that are available, as well as a sense of what success looks like. And then we'll follow up with next steps to show you where to go next. And finally, we'll wrap up, closing out our session today, and we'll end with questions and answers. In the handouts to download panel of today's webinar, we already mentioned that you can download an optional one-page acronym list. But please don't download the answers just yet. This is an activity for you to do during the webinar as we discuss various acronyms that are widely used and important to know about the VISTA program and CNCS. The list does have a few obvious acronyms, such as VISTA, which all of you should know, but there's also some acronyms that only the seasoned VISTA project sponsors will know. Your goal is to fill in all the blanks by the end of this webinar. And speaking of the end of the webinar, at the end, you can download the answer sheet in the handouts panel to see how you did. We think that acronyms are a great place to start because you'll see and hear them frequently used, and they'll help you become better acquainted with our work.
All right, so we're going to dive in with where to start. So if you are a new VISTA sponsor, we know it can be overwhelming to figure out what you need to know, where to find the information, and who to reach out to for help. So here are some key resources for you, and we'll refer to these throughout the presentation today. And as a result of our presentation, we want to be sure that everyone on today's webinar will learn a core set of terms for the VISTA project management. So here we go. This graphic shows where to find information on a variety of topics. The resources on the screen will connect you to websites and resources, such as the CNCS website, which will connect you to various things, including publications. You should create a VISTA campus account if you've not done so already, and review the sponsor handbook, and check out other VISTA sponsor and supervisor information that is available. eGrants, for instance, contains information about your application, VISTA assignment descriptions, or VADs, reporting, and other topics. The resources on this screen now will connect you to people and regulations as you seek support and guidance. The National Service Hotline is who you contact with eGrants issues, questions about VISTA member pay and relocation benefits, and cost share billing. You would contact your CNCS state office for information about project compliance, issues with VISTA members, changing and approving VADs, and anything else project related. It's important for you to know what resources are available to you and where they are so that you can obtain the support you need in your VISTA project. These links and more are available in your VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. As a reminder, you can find the link to the Sponsor Resource Guide in the Handouts panel. Along with getting a handle on the written materials that support you in your VISTA project, I want to underscore the importance of establishing communication expectations with your staff, VISTA members, sub-site staff if you have it, and CNCS. One way to avoid unforeseen issues and complications during the VISTA year is to establish a solid communication chain. In this, your top resource will be your CNCS state office. The CNCF State Office is able to provide a lot of support and also direct you to the key tools and resources. Technical assistance from your state office can take many forms. For example, they can provide technical assistance for things like member recruitment, training, reporting, and the other things you're responsible for. And they can also offer you support in member management and challenges. For VISTA members and daily supervisors with questions or concerns, you as the VISTA sponsor are the first line resource. For questions relating to benefits, you can direct your VISTA member to the VISTA Member Support Unit, or VMSU, the VISTA Member Handbook, and other resources on the VISTA campus. Depending on how your project is structured, it might be the case that you are the main point of contact for members and several supervisors. If it's a question that you're not able to address, then you would contact your CNCF state office. Your state office also has access to other departments and unit at CNCS in the event that we need additional input. All right, here's some key resources, which are in addition to the resources included on your VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. We would like to highlight some key contacts and information that we want to make sure that you know about. On the top of this list, as we've mentioned several times already, is your CNCS state office. They are there to ensure you have the tools, resources, and knowledge you need to lead a successful VISTA project. The VISTA Sponsor Outreach and Recruitment page referenced here should be one of the first places you go because it contains information about recruitment, marketing, fact sheets, and much more. Much of the material available on this page is print ready, so be sure to check it out. The VISTA campus is filled with helpful tools and resources. You can find the Member Handbook and Sponsor Handbook there, as well as a variety of courses to help you through the life of your project. There's also a supervisor forum where you can have a dialogue with other supervisors from around the country. Many of the resources highlighted on the resource guide point you to the VISTA campus. One note is we want to make sure you create a supervisor account on the VISTA campus so that you are able to access everything referenced in the Sponsor Resource Guide. The National Service Hotline offers support to you as well as your members and site supervisors. They can help with common eGrants questions, reset passwords, etc., but they can also escalate calls to the eGrants help desk. Be sure to keep the eGrants support link handy, but remember you can also call the National Service Hotline. The National Service Hotline can also escalate calls to the VISTA Member Support Unit, or the VMSU. The VMSU can troubleshoot member issues related to living allowance or relocation payment issues and can answer questions about benefits such as the Education Award or child care. Also check out the last website for gear/materials, which is pubs.nationalservice.gov. On this site you can find things like posters and brochures. These resources are free and can prove very useful in assisting in recruiting or just spreading the word about your VISTA program. Since you may get questions from VISTA members and we just want to make sure you're informed, VISTA members who can successfully complete all of their pre-work and submit their oath form correctly receive an email within their first couple weeks of service. The email contains instructions on how to order specific free gear that we provide them. Who doesn't love free gear? And that includes a VISTA polo shirt, a VISTA t-shirt, a lapel pin, a tote bag, a journal, and a water bottle. These items are restricted to only VISTA members, and they must be ordered by the members themselves using the instructions in the email they are sent. However, the PUB's website has lots of other materials and resources that you as a sponsor can order.
Depending on how long you've been a sponsor or a supervisor, you've probably been aware that there's a lot of information to know about the AmeriCorps VISTA program, which is great. And that's why we want to start talking about the big picture. So in VISTA 101 that we talked about briefly earlier, the tutorial talks really about VISTA, its mission to empower communities to find solutions to eliminating poverty, and how VISTA members specifically build capacity. As you know, VISTA is all about capacity building and sustainability. So as we mentioned, if you have not yet completed VISTA 101 and VISTA 201, please take a minute at some point in the next couple weeks to do so. And as we mentioned earlier, please refer to the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide, which is a very, very useful document for you. So still as part of the big picture, we're going to take a minute to discuss a few key principles that are essential to the VISTA program. The Corporation for National and Community Service improves lives, strengthens communities, and fosters civic engagement through service and volunteering. As the nation's largest grant maker in support of service and volunteering, CNCS engages Americans of all ages and backgrounds in service to their communities each year through Senior Corps, AmeriCorps, and other programs. CNCS was created in 1993, and it engages more than 5 million Americans every year in improving communities through service. CNCS supports service at national, state, and local levels with a variety of service opportunities. Jillian will now dive a little bit deeper into the work that CNCS does by discussing CNCS's program areas.
Thanks, Eric. So under the broad mission of CNCS, there are two main programming areas, Senior Corps and AmeriCorps. Senior Corps was created in 1965 and includes 3 different programs to engage and serve senior adults in the United States. Individuals who are 55 and older can join RSVP, formerly known as Retired Senior Volunteer Program, Foster Grandparent Program, or the Senior Companion Program. AmeriCorps was created in 1994, and over 1 million members have contributed over 1 billion service hours across America, which is amazing to me. As you can see here, there are 3 different AmeriCorps programs. There's AmeriCorps State and National, AmeriCorps NCCC, and AmeriCorps VISTA. CNCS State Office administers VISTA and Senior Corps programs with your support. For example, in Louisiana, we oversee 12 VISTA projects with about 100 VISTA members across our state. We also oversee 20 Senior Corps programs that manage about 3,500 Senior Corps volunteers. That's just one of many examples of the impact that our state offices and our programs are having across the United States. So now I'll turn it over to Eric for the history of VISTA.
As you've already started to guess and probably already know, the VISTA program has a very rich history. Starting back in 1964, President Lyndon B. Johnson declared a war on poverty and signed the Economic Opportunity Act. This act created Volunteers in Service to America, which we know as VISTA, and other programs to combat poverty. VISTA is authorized under the Domestic Volunteer Service Act of 1973 as amended. The DVSA is a statute, and statutes define the legal boundaries within which the VISTA program may operate. Fast forwarding a few years, in 1993, with President Bill Clinton's signing of the National and Community Service Trust Act, both CNCS and the AmeriCorps programs were established. The National Community Service Trust Act also merged several national service programs, including VISTA, to be part of AmeriCorps. Then, in 2009, the Edward M. Kennedy Serve America Act reauthorized and expanded CNCS's national service programs. Your specific VISTA projects were selected because they demonstrate a substantial connection to VISTA's mission, objectives, and principles. As you know, VISTA's mission is to strengthen organizations that alleviate poverty through volunteering and the mobilization of resources. VISTA is the only AmeriCorps program focused exclusively on fighting poverty. VISTA also has 3 specific objectives of the program: to strengthen local agencies and organizations to carry out the purpose of the program, to encourage volunteer service at the local level, to generate the commitment of private sector resources. As you can see, VISTA's objectives directly support building capacity. Finally, these are the core principles that shape everything AmeriCorps VISTA does: anti-poverty focus, community empowerment, capacity building, sustainable solutions. And remember, your VISTA projects were selected because they demonstrate a strong connection to VISTA's core principles. Now that you know the core mission and principles of VISTA, we'll review some of the key terms and definitions. This information is based on VISTA's authorizing legislation, and it's important to understand how each role is identified. When we use the term project or VISTA project, we mean a set of VISTA activities operated and overseen by a sponsor. Sponsor, project sponsor, VISTA sponsor, or VISTA project sponsor means a public agency or private nonprofit organization that receives assistance and is responsible for operating and overseeing a VISTA project. A public agency may be a federal, state, local, or tribal government. In terms of project director or VISTA project director, that specifically is a staff person of the sponsor who has been assigned by the sponsor the overall responsibility for the management of the VISTA project. Project directors are responsible for executing all aspects of the project as outlined by the sponsor. A supervisor is an individual who directly supervises a VISTA member. This can be at the project level or at the site or subrecipient level. Project sponsors are responsible for ensuring all member supervisors are trained. And it's important to note two things. One, some project directors are also supervisors. And two, if your VISTA project has a VISTA leaders are not VISTA supervisors. And then when we talk about the CNCF state office, CNCF has field staff working throughout the United States. There are CNCF offices representing all 50 states, the District of Columbia, and U.S. territories. Some offices are responsible for multiple states and territories. So next I'll turn it back over to Jillian to talk about how CNCF state office staff can help with outreach, program development, technical assistance, monitoring, and evaluation in support of your VISTA project.
All right, so by now you should be familiar with your CNCF state office. Let's do a quick check to see who you work with. So if you know the name of your CNCF program officer, please type it in the chat. Okay, I'm seeing a few roll in. Okay, recognizing a few that are close. All right, great. So it looks like we have a lot of people who are familiar with their program officer. If you are not, that is perfectly fine, but we do recommend that you contact your state program, your state office to find out who your point of contact would be. So one way you can contact your state office is a simple email address, which is using the two-letter state abbreviation followed by @cns.gov. For example, Wyoming would be WY at cns.gov. I'll do one that I can actually do properly. Louisiana would be LA at cns.gov. So as we said at the beginning, we know a bunch of folks on today's webinar are new to our work, so you may have not had a chance to connect with your state office team yet, but we really encourage you to reach out to them as soon as you can to find out who your point of contact would be so they can offer you support. As we discussed earlier, state offices manage AmeriCorps VISTA as well as senior corps programs in our states. For VISTA projects, the state office helps develop, support, and facilitate VISTA projects throughout their life cycle. We are there to sing your praises and to help you through challenging times. We're also available to help with member emergencies, troubleshooting, and policy questions. Your state office can also support you by connecting you to resources and training tools for you and your members. One really important note here. The CNCF state office is ultimately responsible for the VISTAs in the state. We play an important role in approving candidates for VISTA service and removing members from service. As a reminder, only CNCF can approve members for service. The CNCF state office carefully reviews all applicants that you recommend for VISTA service to ensure they're a good fit for the program. Likewise, CNCF alone has the authority to remove a VISTA member from service. This is one of the reasons why it's critically important for you to update your CNCF state office early and often when it comes to member issues. We'll talk more about the importance of documenting member performance and actions later. This goes without saying, but your VISTA members are critical and necessary for the success of your VISTA program. As you know, VISTA service is a 12-month full-time, so that's 35 to 40 hours a week, commitment where VISTA members provide indirect service to build capacity and sustainability with programs that work to alleviate poverty. So a few notes on some terms here. VISTAs are members. They are not employees, interns, nor volunteers of or with the sponsoring organization. VISTAs serve at their sponsoring agency. They do not work there. VISTAs receive a modest living allowance, not a salary or wage, that aligns with the community that they are serving. So now let's look at a few important topics for your members and those of us who support them. Members often have questions on a variety of topics, and the topic of their questions often depend on how far into their service term they are. VISTA questions tend to fall under one of these categories: benefits, onboarding coursework, end-of-service benefits, travel, and service letters. Members who are about to start service might have more questions about the amount of their living allowance as well as when and how it's paid. Please remember to fully explain member benefits and address some of these topics while interviewing those highly qualified candidates. For example, some benefits such as living allowance are available to all VISTA members. Other benefits such as relocation assistance and child care are only available to some VISTA members and may require the VISTA member to take action in order to make use of the benefit. You'll want to be sure that all members carefully and correctly complete their W-4 and direct deposit information. Members definitely want to keep their direct deposit information updated, since they may change banks if they relocate for service, so that they can receive their living allowance and any approved travel, relocation, or emergency reimbursements. And remember that sponsors are required to reimburse members for any service-related travel that is required of them. For example, if the VISTA assignment description, or VAD, VAD, outlines that the VISTA member will be traveling to community meetings and setting up partnerships, sponsors must reimburse members at the rate your organization uses for travel reimbursement. In addition to the required onboarding forms, VISTA candidates are required to accept the terms and conditions of VISTA service before they can start. This is an online course they take on the VISTA campus. I'm going to turn it over to Eric now to highlight some of the important things VISTA sponsors should understand so that they can best assist their member. So Eric, can you walk us through some of these important topics?
Absolutely, and thank you, Jillian. That's a great idea, especially because I deal with a lot of these topics on a regular basis, and a lot of newer members may have questions about how to request federal loan forbearance on their educational loans. Sometimes they may ask how to inquire the end-of-service cash benefit and how the cash stipend differs from the education award, or how do you use the education award in general. One quick note here is that it is important to distinguish the living allowance from the stipend. Sometimes people call the living allowance a stipend, but the stipend refers to the end-of-service cash stipend, and the living allowance is what VISTAs get paid every 2 weeks. Members who are later on in their service might need more information about how non-competitive eligibility, or NCE, works, or when they'll be able to access their verification of service letter. We're not going to go into detail about each of these topics, but this screen does show numerous topics of interest to VISTA members. Remember that it is ultimately the VISTA members' responsibility to understand the details around these topics, including knowing where to find the benefits and details, which benefits apply to them, and, as Jillian said, knowing what action they must take to utilize them. You also, as their supervisor or as a project director, will also want to know the details around them so that you can support your VISTA members and inform candidates about their benefits during recruitment. When you visit the VISTA campus website, you can view all of the details on this on the benefits section of that website. In addition to the benefits that VISTA members are offered, here are some links to great resources that answer some of the questions that you or your VISTA members may have. We just talked about the VISTA Campus Benefits Hub, which is the first place to go over information about member benefits. Of course, there's the VISTA Member Handbook, which has very important information and guidance regarding policy, some benefits, and more. So you'll want to be sure to reference that, as well as referencing the VISTA Sponsor Handbook and the resource guide for links to more detailed guidance in support of your VISTA members. And also, VISTA members themselves can also contact the VISTA Member Support Unit, the VMSU, for specific benefits questions that they cannot find the answer to on the VISTA campus. So far we've covered quite a bit of information, and we're a little bit over halfway through, but we want to pause here to see if there's 2 or 3 specific questions in the chat panel based on what we've just covered. So, using the chat panel, let Jillian and I know, are there any questions, for example, about any of the websites we mentioned, eGrant, CNCS website, maybe there's a question about the state office or some of the member benefits. We're not going to go into specific detail as we mentioned, but we do want to pause just for a minute to see if there are any burning questions before we move on, because we know these types of topics do tend to generate quite a bit of questions and thoughts and comments. And I see some people typing now, so it looks like 1 or 2 people are trying to see if they can stump Jillian and I. That's not the name of the game, but
please don't.
We'll go ahead and answer one or 2 of the questions as they come into the chat. And keep in mind, as you're typing, oh, there's a question. So yes, and will this presentation be available for us to download? In the handouts to download panel now, you can download the presentation and the slide notes, and the file is just called Slide Notes, VISTA Sponsor Orientation. So you can already download that now. The next question is about time and attendance. I want to confirm that the VISTA members get all the same holidays that our organization takes off. The quick answer to that is, in general, that is normally true. VISTA members do get 10 personal days and 10 sick days as part of the VISTA program. In addition to that, they do receive any one-off federal or other holidays that your organization observes. For example, if you take Veterans Day off, your VISTA would additionally get that 1 day off. The exception is if your organization takes 3, 4, 8 days off just for a break. The VISTA would not get that extended time off as extra vacation. For any extended leave, that VISTA would need to work with you and the state office, and they would either need to take personal leave during that time or find a way to still serve. But in general, any single holiday that your organization observes, your VISTA would automatically get those days off as well. The next question is from Kim about how can we find out more information for the benefits that are offered to VISTAs. You go to the VISTA campus and you click on Members, then you click on Starting VISTA. We call it the Starting VISTA page. That's the same page that we direct all of the incoming VISTA members to, and on that page there's a section on benefits, and that's where all the information about the benefits is located, so it's easy and quick to find. Let me see.
Eric, I'll just jump in here for a minute. We have a question about taking a job posting down. That's definitely something that you'll want to contact your state office about. That's the type of technical assistance they can help guide you through. So again, that 2-letter state abbreviation at cns.gov. Again, if someone asks if the rules change in the middle of the grant period, that is most likely some information that would be sent out from your state office. So definitely always be reading your emails that you get from CNCS.
Thank you for that, Jillian, and that kind of segues into, we'll take 2 more really quick questions and we'll move on. There was a question about, on the more resources member benefits slide that we talked about earlier, should sponsors and supervisors be sharing those types of benefits with VISTA hires upon when they select their VISTAs? Absolutely. We know that a lot of VISTA candidates and individuals who apply for VISTA, some of them are aware of some of their benefits, like the living allowance and relocation if they apply, but sometimes they're not aware of child care or health care or things like that. So definitely share those resources. Again, they're all located on the VISTA campus website. Let them know about them, because that sometimes could help them decide whether or not they want to serve if they have to do some financial calculations based on other benefits they receive. And then the last question I see is from Ben, going back to the time and attendance question we have about whether or not members have to receive permission for time off. They do. It is up to the VISTA supervisor and the VISTA member to keep track of their time and attendance. We do recommend, and I'll turn it over to Jillian after I'm done speaking on this, we do recommend that the VISTA member and the supervisor are in touch with their state office, especially if the member gets close to exhausting their 10 personal and 10 sick leave days. but it's up to you as the supervisor to determine if you want the member to request that time off a week in advance, 2 weeks, a month. Be flexible and work with them, but I'll turn it over to Jillian to see if she has any other additional comments about leave time.
No additional comments except to note that the leave time is exactly that. It is 10 personal days and 10 sick days, and we don't have an official like comp time policy where they request, working extra hours a certain week to get those hours off the other week. So you always want to check with your state office to make sure that you are documenting their leave requests in the way that you'll need to keep on file. I also really quickly see a question about emergency days. Emergency days have to be approved by the state program director, so that's something that you need to request in advance. So anything outside of those 10 personal and 10 sick days, contact your state office and they'll guide you on the next steps.
And we know there's a lot more questions that are on your mind or coming. Certainly keep those coming in the chat. We will have a little bit more time at the end of the presentation to respond to those. But right now, we're going to head and continue, and we're going to take another look at our agenda to see what we've covered and what's next in our presentation. So today so far, we've looked at where to start as a new project sponsor. We talked about the origins of the VISTA program and some of the important details about member positions, benefits, etc. Next, we're going to look at some of the core responsibilities that VISTA sponsors have. And you might already know this, but as a sponsor, you have joined VISTA sponsors from across the nation in the mission of fighting poverty in your community. Your role is important to the success of the project, the members, and ultimately the impact on the poverty community. Every VISTA project is accountable for the responsibilities that we will outline, but each VISTA sponsor may assign these responsibilities as appropriate within the organization and project. And it is the VISTA sponsor's responsibility to ensure that all subsites are in compliance with VISTA policies and procedures. In terms of member management, a successful VISTA project starts off with a strong and effective recruitment plan. At a minimum, this includes creating solid VISTA assignment descriptions, or VADs, which guide VISTA members in their service throughout the year. Drafting catchy and honest opportunity listings to announce your position and attract top quality candidates, as well as recruiting, screening, interviewing, and recommending the best candidate for service. Providing an in-depth and well-thought-out on-site orientation and training to all incoming VISTA members at the beginning of their service, to include the VISTA member orientation requirements, as well as fingerprint instructions and deadlines. This on-site orientation and training, what we call OSAT, should also include opportunities for professional development and learning. Strong VISTA sponsors really do this well and find ways to integrate various aspects of the organization and the community with important things the VISTA members should know, as well as with the interests and skills of the VISTA member.
Here are a few more important aspects of the AmeriCorps VISTA member management. It's probably no surprise that the best projects offer day-to-day supervision and support of their members. This includes confirming that members have space, supplies, and equipment necessary to carry out their service. Also providing reasonable accommodations to members who request them based on different abilities, and ensuring that the members' activities are in line with their VADs. Even the best-run projects have member issues bubble up, so don't be disappointed if things get a little tricky. The important thing is to manage those member issues appropriately. This means addressing the member issues as they arise, informing your state office early of any issues, and most important, documenting all discussions, tracking performance, keeping on top of the situation. And remember, only CNCF may remove members from your project, and only CNCF may terminate members. So your documentation of member issues and discussing them with the CNCF state office is very important.
In terms of timekeeping, and we've talked quite a bit about keeping track of time and attendance, etc., you'll want to develop a system to track VISTA members' use of personal and medical leave because as we said, it is your responsibility to monitor and manage the use of the VISTA members' leave time. Remember that you can visit the VISTA member handbook for the rules regarding when it is permissible for VISTA members to use their leave. And this is an important note just because in case there's ever an audit or in case you ever encounter any issues with your VISTA member and they're not reporting to site, it's important for you to also have this documented so you know when they were on their site and when they were on leave. And as we said earlier, in addition to the 10 personal and 10 medical days, VISTA members are entitled to most holidays observed by your organization, but seasonal breaks, such as being off for an extended period of time, must be discussed with your CNCS state office. We love data, and we know that many of you do as well, because keeping track of data can relate to sustainability and many other things as you track what's going on. So make sure that you have your VISTA members track what they accomplish, not just for your records, but they'll want to do it as well. This will ensure that you have accurate data, especially when it's time to report on performance measure targets. Consider creating a procedure manual or resource to keep track of steps that you or your VISTA members take to develop and send out communications, update an online website or flyer, and more. These elements are all part of keeping VISTA project and elements of what you do sustainable and identifying things that you can do to keep the project going well into the future. And as a reminder, we talked about this earlier, but we'll say it again, the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide is your best friend as a comprehensive list of resources to help you successfully manage your members. A few more topics that we mentioned relating to performance and member management. We'll add to those and talk about the following activities that are allowed but must be approved in advance. With prior approval by the VISTA sponsor, the VISTA supervisor, and the CNCS state office, AmeriCorps VISTA members are allowed teleservice, which is serving at a location other than their project site for very limited durations. They're allowed to hold outside employment, and they're allowed to attend educational courses. Just remember that even though these activities are allowed, the VISTA member must request these through the project director and then have it approved through the CNCS state office.
The CNCS state office is always thinking about what's best for the project, and the CNCS state office has the ability to deny requests that may interfere with the VISTA member service or interfere with the successfulness of the project. To be safe, you should consult your CNCS state office if any changes are made that impact or will impact the project, subsites, or members. This could mean a change with project personnel and supervision of members, or it could mean that due to an emerging community need, a VAD must be tweaked to better support alleviating poverty in your community. Regardless, it's always a good idea to check with your state office, and the sooner they know about these shifts, the more support they'll be able to give.
So let's take a look at some of your core responsibilities in adhering to some very important restrictions on what can be done during VISTA service. Prior to service, VISTA members must complete 2 courses. One is Civil Rights and Responsibilities, the other one is Terms and Conditions, and that details what's provided to and allowed by members during VISTA service. If a member violates any one of the terms or conditions, you will need to contact your CNCS state office immediately. Different violations have different repercussions, and for the protection of the project and any other members on board, it's critical to act promptly. With regard to criminal activity, VISTAs and VISTA sponsors must report any criminal activity that occurs while in service to their CNCS state office. Regarding religious activity, engaging in religious instruction, conducting worship services, or engaging in any form of proselytizing during service time is prohibited. And speaking of prohibitions around political activity, engaging in partisan political activities while in service, such as engaging in fundraising for a partisan political campaign at any time, or advertising oneself as a VISTA while engaging in partisan political activity, are all prohibited. The Hatch Act is a federal law that was first enacted in 1939. VISTA members are considered federal employees for a very few limited purposes, including the Hatch Act. The Hatch Act does ensure that federal employees and VISTA members do not participate in political activity prohibited under the Hatch Act. VISTA members also cannot be involved in voter registration as part of their VISTA service. They can do it if it's not part of their VISTA service, though, and they would just need to do it on their own time, not in VISTA gear, and not being identified as a VISTA member or perceived to be a VISTA member. And in general, VISTA members cannot engage in political activity, religious activity, lobbying, or union organizing as part of their service or while perceived to be a VISTA. They can go to rallies, attend church services, and do that kind of stuff on their own non-VISTA time, but they cannot engage in either type of activity while serving or while identifying as a VISTA. Also, the Hatch Act prohibits VISTA members from fundraising or soliciting money for a partisan political campaign at any time during their year of service, and that is prohibited whether it's during their service hours or on their own time. However, they may personally donate to a partisan political campaign.
Now we'll move on to supplanting staff. Members shall not perform duties that should be done or are typically done by paid staff or contractors. This would be a major red flag because VISTA members are placed at organizations not to take the place of staff, but to be catalysts for change by building capacity and strengthening organizations with a goal of eradicating poverty. And nepotism. We ask that you avoid the actual or appearance of favoritism in the operation of a VISTA placement. A VISTA member cannot be placed or assigned to a VISTA project site if the VISTA member is the immediate family member or close relative of a project site staff member or vice versa. And then the biggest one, direct service. The role of VISTA is to build capacity to bring communities out of poverty, and members do not perform direct service activities except if needed during training, or doing so is merely incidental to performing their VAD in direct service duties. For example, a member might design a school curriculum, but should not be the one regularly tutoring children with the curriculum. Rather, they could recruit volunteers to tutor the children. That way, it is sustainable so that the volunteers can continue to work with children after the VISTA is gone. If you'd like more information or a full description of prohibited activities, please visit Chapter 15 of the Member Handbook. Now, let's dive into core responsibilities for the project management. It's important to know that all sponsors must follow the requirements and policies set forth in the Memorandum of Agreement, or MA. Your organization has entered into a legal agreement with CNCS. All projects must have an anti-poverty focus. That should not be a surprise. All project activities from the application to the VISTA assignment description should tie back to alleviating poverty in your community. And if your project is already underway, you might be responsible for the project continuation. Be sure to submit a continuation application 90 days before your current Memorandum of Agreement expires. Your state office should contact you with information on how to start your continuation. All right, so we're going to take another moment to check in with everyone. Please take a minute to type your answer in the chat panel if you know. What is your project start date? Oh, we have a lot of August people. Okay. Okay, I'm seeing some dates that look like they might be our VISTA member orientation dates, which is interesting. So one thing we do want to clarify is that when your VISTA start is a little bit different than your project start. So your Memorandum of Agreement will have your actual project start dates for that. And it's okay if you don't know the exact dates. That's when you contact your state office and make sure that you know that so you can make sure that your MA stays up to date and that you have adequate time to start on that continuation.
If your VISTA project happens to operate at more than one location or service site, you are required to have a memorandum of understanding with each of your sub-sites or multi-site sponsors and encourage partnership development. Depending on your agreement with CNCS, you might also be responsible for activities related to cost share. If you do have questions about your agreement with CNCS, you can access the cost share agreement in eGrants or talk to your CNCS state office. Finally, It's good to know that everyone is responsible for reporting in some way or another, so let's spend a few minutes talking about reporting requirements.
Everyone loves reporting. So there's some core responsibilities for reporting. Each VISTA project submits a set of reports to help CNCS review project progress. The information you provide in these reports demonstrates your project's impact. They also demonstrate your ability for resource management, and they allow us to provide you better technical assistance. Since these are very important things to know, Eric and I will talk you through a variety of required reports. And as we start, it's also good to know that your state office will provide all deadlines for your reports, and you'll be able to find instructions in the sponsor resource guide. eGrants also is a great place to check for your report deadlines. All right, so now we're going to walk through the main reports required from all VISTA sponsors, and this has so many acronyms, so get out your worksheet. All projects are required to submit the Sponsor Verification Forms, or SVF, VISTA Project Progress Reports, or PPR, VISTA Progress Report Supplement, VPRS, and the Future Plans Forms, or FPF. Only projects that have a program or support grant have to submit a Federal Financial Report, or FFR. If you have questions about what type of grant you have with CNCS, access the agreement in eGrants or talk to your state office. So we'll start with the SVF, the Sponsor Verification Form. This helps CNCS track which members are still actively serving at your project so we can prevent member overpayment. Ideally, you would contact your state office if a member is not reporting to your site, but this form does serve as a safety net in case that communication did not happen, and it ties to our payroll process. So it ties in directly with the member payroll for standard VISTA projects. Please be sure to set reminders for this project. And if you're going to be out of the office, please determine who's going to submit this report on your behalf. The function must be completed by a staff member, so you cannot delegate it to another AmeriCorps member, an intern, or a volunteer. You're also required to submit project progress reports, or PPRs. So for the first year of your project, they're generally completed on a quarterly basis. The reports should build on each other, so they will be cumulative. So the first report may be for the first 3 months. The next one will be for 6 months, then 9 months, etc. Check with your state office and in eGrants for more details on due dates depending on your project year, because after your second year, progress reports are typically semi-annual, but that transition is at the discretion of the state office. The progress report information will be part of your project's official record and will be used to evaluate a project's continuation. If you have questions on what you should include, I'll refer you to the PPR instructions in your VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. We cannot reference that enough. If you are a project with multiple sites, you'll need to establish a way to aggregate information about members serving at those sites. So don't wait to do that till the last minute. We encourage you to start establishing those systems now. Also, don't wait until your progress report is due to ask a question or to share a great story about a member's impact. We are always looking for stories to share about the difference our members are making in the community. So we encourage you to share information with your state office as it happens. And if you have a question, we can help coach you through your challenges, and we also want to share your successes. So keep in touch with your state office.
The next report that we will transition into is the VISTA Progress Report Supplement, or VPRS. We told you we like acronyms, so just get used to them. This is an annual report, and it tracks demographic information on your project. This report typically is due late in the calendar year and is based on our agency's fiscal year, which is October 1st of one year through September 30th of the next year. So this means that you will likely have to track information with your members on a monthly basis to accurately submit this report, which is in our best interest and yours as well, because some projects want to solicit additional information that we don't capture in our reports. You can find instructions on how to complete this VPRS report in the VISTA Sponsor Resource Guide. Next is the FPF, the Future Plans Form, and you must complete one of these for every member at the end of their term of service. So just a few details so you understand what this is. The Future Plans form unlocks for the VISTA member in their my.americorps.gov account about 90 days prior to their end of service. The VISTA member must complete the first part, Part A, before they complete their service. Then you, as the supervisor, will submit Part B, which evaluates the member's service. We do strongly recommend that you coordinate with the VISTA member's supervisor if you are not directly supervising this individual. Then, after you submit Part B, the member has the opportunity to review your comments. So it might be in your best interest to host some type of an exit interview so that the member is aware of what you're entering for their review. Once both Part A and Part B are complete, it then comes to the CNCS State Office for review. Next, in looking at the FFR, or Federal Financial Report, this report is for program and support grants, and there is additional reporting requirements such as the FFR. Make sure that you do connect with your CNCS State Office for more specific details on what is required of your specific grant. And you probably want to loop in the fiscal staff at your organization as appropriate. If you do not have a program or support grant, you do not need to worry about this FFR report. And finally, if you have a cost share agreement, cost share invoices are payable upon receipt. You will receive them either on a biweekly or a monthly basis in e-grants, depending on your agreement.
Now we'd like to share a few tips about these reports and forms. We recommend you complete these forms early in the process, so it can help you manage your member recruitment and seeing some of the reports like the Future Plans form tied directly to member and alumni benefits, specifically to accessing the Education Award. In terms of the Future Plans form, for example, if a member wants to re-enroll or extend their service, then you should document how they successfully supported your project and accomplished activities on their VAD and rate them accordingly. Of course, you'll have to have been documenting this throughout the year to get your best picture, so documentation is always important. This will help the CNCS staff office evaluate the request and compare it to our budget. If a member needs to leave or terminate their service early, the CNCS state office can unlock the Future Plans form. However, the request to unlock the form should not be the first time the CNCS state office is hearing that a member will be terminating their service. Please bring the state office into the conversation early so that we can help you troubleshoot any potential issues and offer additional solutions. I know this was a lot of information to absorb, a lot of acronyms, a lot of reports. So again, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to your state office. The state office is here to help. So you've heard us talking about working with your state office quite a bit already. Another responsibility for you is to share the good, the bad, and the ugly with the state office. By communicating openly and early, you position them to best support you. There are some things that the CNCS state office needs to hear about promptly rather than when your next progress report is submitted. So be sure to alert your CNCS state office of any major accomplishments and events, such as a new grant award, a visit from elected official, and press coverage as they happen rather than waiting for the next progress report. Your state office will want to hear about and spread the word about your success. Also notify them promptly of any major emergencies, such as member hospitalization or arrest, member being absent without leave, or member potentially being early terminated, as well as any acute or chronic challenges with members, such as performance, conduct issues, extreme tardiness, etc. Your state office is here to support you and needs to be up to date on your project status in order to do that effectively. Communication with them about proposed changes to your project goals and member activities, that is, any changes to the VISTA assignment description, as well as shifts in staff, supervision, and organizational status.
We can only hope that you are extremely excited about your VISTA project and that you want to talk about it everywhere. So that's why we recommend that you really share the information about your VISTA project with your communities, with your networks, with people you know and talk to. Acknowledge the resources that you receive by identifying AmeriCorps VISTA members as such, and listing AmeriCorps VISTA as a funder of your organization. Be sure to list AmeriCorps VISTA in your materials, on your websites, in your email signature, and mention the program in verbal conversations about your project. Your communities and networks will want to be in the loop about what's going on with your VISTA project, not just to spread the word on the capacity you're building, but also to cultivate engagement and promote opportunities to serve with your organization. So we're still talking about core responsibilities, and now we're going to segue to talk about core responsibilities relating to regulatory compliance. As a VISTA sponsor, it is your responsibility to comply with all regulations and requirements of the VISTA program. CNCF staff conduct monitoring and compliance visits throughout the life of your project. Since AmeriCorps VISTA is a federal program, and like anything supported by taxpayer funds, we need to ensure that the program is well run, doing what it's supposed to, and spending money wisely.
CNCF staff ensure compliance by reviewing VADs to make sure they are appropriate for VISTA service and free from non-approved activities. CNCF staff may also conduct site visits and compliance monitoring visits. So we'll break down the difference between those right now. So site visits are generally conducted by CNCF staff in the field. They may occasionally have headquarters personnel as well. They may be informational in nature, coming to see the successes that you've had, or they may be to provide technical assistance, answer questions, discuss any issues with you, or they might be for general project monitoring. Compliance monitoring visits are always scheduled in advance and are always structured. They will most likely include interviews with project staff, VISTA members, advisory council members, and community members or beneficiaries. Compliance monitoring visits will include a review of documentation and procedures. A letter outlining conclusions and needed corrective actions is shared after. CNCF conducts these visits to make sure that grantees are following the rules for AmeriCorps member and grant management and to provide support to the VISTA sponsoring organizations. You'll see that VISTA members also have a role when it comes to regulatory compliance. It is important to know that CNCF instructs VISTA members who feel they've been asked to do things that are not appropriate for their service to first talk about it with their supervisor. From there, they can talk with the CNCF state office. If the issue isn't resolved, or if they want to remain anonymous and they believe the matter relates to fraud, waste, or abuse, they can contact the CNCF Office of Inspector General. If a VISTA member believes they've been subject to illegal discrimination related to their VISTA service, they should immediately contact the CNCF Equal Opportunity Program, which will also be covered a little bit later. Remember to report concerns to your CNCF state office, and they are there to help you develop, manage, and monitor your VISTA projects. They're there to support you in managing your projects and your VISTA members. They're there to assist you with member emergencies, challenging situations, and questions of policy. And they're there to support you by connecting you to needed resources. We've talked about prohibited activities a little bit earlier in our presentation, so now let's review a few important points. VISTA members should focus on what's outlined in the VISTA assignment description, which should tie directly to the overall project plan that was approved by CNCS. Your VISTA service should be there to build capacity, not undertake activities that could be construed as direct service. If VISTA members are being asked to take over the work of staff, say someone who left the organization, that's replacing or supplanting staff and it's not allowed. Or if a VISTA member is mostly doing administrative support, that's also not appropriate work for a VISTA member.
So far today, we've covered the big picture of national service and talked through some of the major elements of VISTA sponsor responsibilities. And as we, of course, want to make sure that you start off on the right foot and with much success, we'll share some member and project management keys to success. Some of the recommendations for strong AmeriCorps VISTA management include many different things. And by now, it should be no surprise that ongoing communication with your CNCS state office is critical. Make sure that they're aware of any challenges as well as successes, as Jillian mentioned earlier. But let's take a look at a few other items. For recruitment, You'll want to start early and be proactive. Be innovative and think of new ways to recruit and attract people. Take time to locate members that are a good fit, know the member benefits, and understand what it might be like to live on the living allowance so that when people ask, you have an idea of how to respond. And invest time in drafting compelling opportunity listings to really hook the right candidate, since that's the first thing they will oftentimes see in advertising your VISTA project. VISTA members over the years have talked about wanting to learn and grow, and they really want professional development opportunities. So offer those as much as you can and support them throughout the development of your on-site orientation and training. That first couple of weeks that you're doing the on-site orientation and training is key to the retention of VISTA members. And speaking of ongoing support and supervision, it is important to address any supervision issues early on. Be sure to keep track of time and attendance, avoid direct service and other prohibited activities, and work with your CNCF state office if there's any requests for outside employment, teleservice, or very limited direct service. If you do have a VISTA leader, understand the role of a VISTA leader. Again, this person is not a supervisor, but you'll want to utilize them to support, train, and guide your members through success. One thing we can't stress enough, schedule and maintain regular meetings with VISTAs, at least in the first couple weeks of service, on a regular basis so that they have some consistency. And one suggestion, consider the 10-10-10 method, which is just for the first 10 minutes, it's dedicated to the VISTA member speaking and talking about their questions, comments. Then you take the next 10 minutes, responding to the VISTA and providing your comments. And then the final 10 minutes is available for clarification, questions, and next steps. It keeps the meeting short, but very structured, and helps the VISTA member feel like they're valued because you are giving them the first point to talk. And you'll also want to work hard to retain and motivate your members by showing appreciation and recognition of them and their work. As you get close to their 6th, 7th, 8th month of service and beyond, you really want to start thinking about their close of service. You want to help prepare them for their next steps once they complete their service, not just in transitioning the work to someone else, but also in thinking of how they're going to exit and leave the project. This also helps you start planning for the next VISTA member and thinking about what activities you want to continue into the next VISTA member and ultimately keep going for the organization's sustainability. So we're going to shift and look at the top tips for success related to project management. Again, at the top of the list, we say it a lot, ongoing communication with the CNCF state office. Remember to reach out to them early and often and tell them about the good and the bad before it gets ugly. And also think about operating your projects in accordance with applicable laws, regulations, policies, certifications, and assurances, with best efforts to accomplish the goals set out for the AmeriCorps VISTA members in the project application, and in consultation with and involving the people of the communities to be served in planning, developing, and implementing the project. Like all federal agencies, CNCF has an Inspector General whose office is responsible for preventing and detecting waste, fraud, and abuse. If you encounter any issues with your VISTA project, address them at the sponsor level and, if necessary, with your CNCF state office. If the issues are not resolved, or if you want to remain anonymous, you certainly can contact the Office of Inspector General. The Office of Inspector General does take all allegations seriously and conducts thorough investigations to ensure compliance with federal regulations and the terms of the VISTA program. VISTA members are protected by VISTA and CNCF from being subjected to discrimination or harassment. You also have an obligation to make sure that you do not subject anyone to discrimination or harassment. This applies to everyone you come in contact with, including VISTA members, clients, volunteers, and employees at your service site. CNCF has an Equal Opportunity Office, or EOP, that's responsible for and charged with reviewing and processing discrimination complaints filed by CNCF service members, including VISTA members. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Jillian to cover some important next steps as you continue throughout your VISTA sponsor orientation and work to create and maintain a well-run VISTA program.
All right, thanks, Eric. We hope that today's presentation has given you a good sense of the role of the VISTA sponsor and a sense of where to go to learn more. So let's review the next steps as we wrap up today. Following this webinar, please email your CNCF State Office that you completed this session. Your CNCF State Office will be able to answer your project-specific questions or any questions we're not able to get to today. And they can review next steps as you continue to learn about VISTA, your project, and your roles and responsibilities. Again, if you are unsure who to contact at your state office, you can use your two-letter state abbreviation at cns.gov. If you are a sub-site supervisor, you should receive project-specific training from your project director. Remember that this webinar is just one part of the entire VISTA sponsor orientation. Make sure that you go back to the VISTA sponsor orientation section of the VISTA campus and look at the orientation checklist to complete the remaining items. As you prepare to manage a VISTA project, take time to review the resources that have already been shared with you and become familiar with the VISTA campus. You will find many helpful resources there, including discussion forums in the Supervisors Cafe, a discussion thread, and respond to other supervisors. You'll be able to share ideas and resources, answer each other's questions, and more. And finally, be sure to pursue any other trainings as directed by the VISTA program or by your state office.
So we've almost gotten to the end, but first we want to say please, please, please share your feedback on today's webinar because we value your input and suggestions and we do take a look at everything that people write. If you do not automatically see the evaluation appear on your computer, which you should see in the bottom right corner of your screen, a new survey link pod that's been posted next to the handouts panel, and that's where you can access the link for today's evaluation. Also a reminder, in about 7 to 10 days, the recording of today's presentation will be posted on the VISTA campus on the VISTA Sponsor Orientation Materials website. And as you complete the evaluation and provide your feedback, we know that there's probably a couple more questions that are on your mind or you're wondering about. So we will take this time. Again, if you do have questions, first you can post them in the chat panel for Jillian and I to answer. We'll also turn it to Kim and Jeff to provide instructions as to how people can ask a question by phone.
Thanks, Eric and Jillian. If you've dialed into the webinar or had Adobe Connect call you back, you can ask questions using your phone. To ask your question over the phone line, press *# and you will be placed into the queue. When it's your turn to ask your question, you will hear the prompt, "Go ahead, caller." Then you may proceed with your question. Once again, to ask a question over the phone line, press *# to be placed into the queue. Back to you, Eric.
Thank you, Jeff. One question that came in from Kristen was, can AmeriCorps VISTA start in October? And I'm assuming that's a question of an AmeriCorps VISTA member starting in October, not on a VISTA project. So most of the time the answer to that question is no, and that's simply because the AmeriCorps VISTA program as part of CNCS is on a fiscal year. So since October 1 is the beginning of our fiscal year, we typically do not have any new VISTA member inputs in the month of October as it takes a while to get everything going. We will soon have a list of upcoming dates for VISTA member orientations that you can get from your CNCF state office. But as of right now, we typically do not have new VISTA members starting in the month of October. See a few more people typing, so certainly we'll stay on for a few minutes. And right now we do not have anyone calling in by phone, but Jillian and I are here to see if you can ask a question. I know sometimes one of the questions that comes in is, if I'm a sub-site supervisor, how does communication work between my intermediary and the CNCF state office? Who's responsible for what? That really depends on you and your sub-site supervisor. You work out a communication plan. A lot of intermediaries are the group that contacts the CNCF state office, but that would be something you'd work out in your memorandum of understanding to determine how the communication chain works and how frequently the communication would come in. Another question from Kristen, do VISTA members have to start on the same day as the VISTA member orientation? The answer to that question is yes. And I'll very briefly describe the VISTA member orientation because that sometimes comes up. So all new VISTA members have to start service on the same day as their VISTA member orientation. And that's because there's some very important tools, resources, information, as well as the official oath of service that we administer to those VISTA members on that day. And if you want specific details about what's included in the VISTA member orientation, again, if you go to the VISTA campus website and go to that Starting VISTA page, that website is the same website we direct all incoming AmeriCorps VISTA candidates to, so you'll be seeing the exact same thing that they see. And it explains that they have some pre-work, which includes some online forms they have to complete in their my.americorps.gov website, the 2 courses they have to complete on the VISTA campus. All that has to be done before they start service. Then they attend 2 webinars. One is called Countdown to VISTA Service, which is 6 days before they start service. And then they attend their official Launching Your VISTA Service webinar on their first day of service at their project site. And that's the webinar that on the webinar we provide information about the VISTA program, a lot more details, and that's the webinar on which we actually swear them into their official service as an AmeriCorps VISTA member. But again, if you want more details, and there are a lot more details, I would recommend going to that Starting VISTA page of the VISTA campus to make sure that you're aware of what's included in the VISTA member orientation, and you can also direct your members and candidates if they have questions about that. So Jillian, I'm going to answer the next question briefly, and then I'll turn it to you because you handle it more than I do. But this question comes from Madeline about, do we have any specific resources to understand e-grants? The one piece I'll mention, Madeline, is I know there has been some information somewhat recently updated. We talk about the VISTA campus a lot, but there are a lot of resources on there. And actually, if you just go to that website and type in e-grants, there's a couple of different instructional documents and materials that kind of walk you through how e-grants works and through different scenarios of what you need to do to access certain reports. But I know Jillian, in her role as CNCF State Program Officer, works with e-grants on a regular basis, so she may have some other tips or recommendations.
Yeah, well, you pretty much answered it, Eric. Whenever I need to send anyone instructions, I use the resources that are available on VISTA campus. In a limited way, the state office can see what the grantee sees in e-grants. So a lot of times I will sit on the phone and walk someone through, click here, click there. So I definitely recommend if you have a specific something that you're trying to accomplish in e-grants to call your state office or email them and see what resources they can either send you or help walk you through.
And that's a great answer also to Frida's question about if eGrants is not loading your reports or if for some reason you cannot access the reports. Definitely email your CNCF state office. They can either offer technical assistance or they can work with you to find an alternative solution. But if it is an eGrants issue, go ahead.
I would also recommend contacting the eGrants Help Desk, which I believe is a link down towards the bottom when you're on eGrants. There should be a Contact Help Desk, and you can submit an online form. Or, as we said, if you are having technical issues, you can call the National Service Hotline, and they can assist with those or escalate it to the eGrants Help Desk.
So I don't see any other questions coming in. We'll be on the call for just another minute or so to see if there's any remaining questions. Like we said, as we wait for a few more seconds, again, your best points of contact, if you have questions about benefits or member policies, go to the VISTA campus and go to the Benefits Hub for benefits. Go to the VISTA Member Handbook for questions about policy, as well as the VISTA Sponsor Handbook. If you have questions specifically about reporting or things specific to your VISTA project, your best point of contact is your CNCF State Program Officer. And again, as Jillian said earlier, you contact them by the 2-letter state abbreviation at cns.gov. And I see one more question coming in. So the question was about accessing the audio or the presentation after. So on we'll post it in the chat in a minute, but on the VISTA Campus website, if you just in the search field, type in sponsor orientation materials. We'll post a link in the chat, but that's where we'll post the link to the recording of this webinar, which has obviously the slides as well as the audio for it. And then don't forget that the handouts panel also has a copy of the slides if you'd like to download those before we close the presentation, as well as the acronym list and the very, very well touted and proud VISTA sponsor resource guide. So with that, we'll go ahead and move to the next final 3 slides. And we know we talked a lot about acronyms, so don't forget to go to the acronym panel to download the answers. But while you're still in the webinar, quickly type in the chat, how did you do? Did you get most of them? Did you know most of them? We're just curious to see how many VISTA sponsors have a pretty good clue of some of these acronyms in advance. The document is in Microsoft Word format, so that if you have other acronyms that you hear or want to see, you can add them so you can remember them. And it looks like most people did pretty well with them, which is good. So that's good. Ooh, someone got all but one. You get the gold star today. I wish I could magically send you a gold star, but if you just go to Google Images and type in gold star, you'll find one. So remember to keep this answer sheet accessible as you get to know the CNCF structure, our staff, and the VISTA project requirements, because you might get questions from VISTA members, and it's nice to be able to help them also understand the acronyms. You can see we've completed our tasks for today. We hope that our discussion has given you a really good starting point as you jump into your new role as VISTA sponsor or VISTA project director. And again, any questions, you know who to contact, your CNCF State Program Officer, and the VISTA campus for more resources. I do want to really say thank you, especially to my co-presenter Jillian Winters for all of her work, not just on this webinar, but all the work she does with CNCS and in support of our AmeriCorps VISTA members and program. Thank you to Barbara Reynolds for all of her continued support, and all the other CNCS staff, as well as our partners at LSI, Kim and Jeff, for their work prior to and during this webinar. We, of course, want to thank you so much for joining us today, and thank you for filling the integral and very influential role of VISTA sponsor. Whether you know it or not, your work makes a huge difference to the VISTA program, to your VISTA members and leaders, and to your community. Thank you. This concludes our session. Have an amazing day, and thank you for being part of the AmeriCorps VISTA program.